Okay, we're going to start the presentation. We'll get people coming and going, hopefully. More coming. Okay, thanks. I'm Mike Dillon. I'm the president of AutoHouse Technologies, and this is Jenica Bennett, client services specialist. So thanks for SAAR for the invite. We're going to cover a few things here today. Just back up here a little bit. 3 agenda points. SAAR and the Western Alliance, which is made up of SAAR, the ATA in Manitoba, and the ARA in BC. And then we also throw in Alberta as a comparative there. So we're going to show some comparisons between the 3 government provinces primarily. Then we're going to dig a little deeper and look into some Saskatchewan-specific metrics and performance of KPIs. And then we're going to actually touch on what is data-driven. So understanding, we use the term data-driven performance a lot. So we're going to go a little deeper in that and kind of unpack that a little bit to give you guys a little bit of insight what we actually do for a living. So the Western Alliance, like I said, made up of SAAR, ATA, and ARA, and we throw Alberta in there. So there's a quarterly report that we put together, benchmark for SAAR and the other provinces, and it gets distributed out to Tom quarterly. And I think he distributes pretty much through all the SAAR members. So if you want to see that report and you haven't seen it before, just reach out to Tom. He'll be more than happy to share it with you. We're going to go a little deeper though, so kind of on this part of it, instead of going through the actual report, did a little bit of analysis between the 3 provinces. We've been doing this for pretty close to 4 years on those quarterly reports. So what we wanted to do is look at the 3 provincial provinces that are government insured and throw Alberta in there as a comparative. So we're seeing the actual average severity of 5334 for Saskatchewan, and that's up almost 50%, 49% over the last 3 years. So the comparative we used was the first 2 quarters of 2020 and the first 2 quarters of 2023. And we're just looking at what the increases are and what's driving those increases. As we can see, BC's pretty close in severity, 5,100. Manitoba's the lowest of the bunch at about 4,750. And Alberta, the private market, is always seems to be higher. So we'll go into that in a little bit more detail and take a look maybe what's driving that. So we're going to break down that average severity now by its actual components. So we look at labor. Average labor is about $1,175 for Saskatchewan right now, up about 25%, 23% over 3 years ago. So there will be a couple drivers for that. Some of it will be labor rate increases, and other will be the additional repair procedures that the more sophisticated vehicles are requiring. Now you can see BC's up 34% in labor. Alberta up about 20, is that 29? 20? 20, and Manitoba's up about 30%. So fairly consistent between 20 to mid-30s that labor's increased over the last 3 years from our earlier benchmark. We look at refinish. Refinish hasn't changed a whole bunch. It's pretty static. Refinish hours generally don't fluctuate a lot. Where there is some influence there is some of the tri-code or 3 stages that was talked about earlier today. So refinish labor as part of the overall severity or overall repair cost is pretty static. The one that kind of surprised me when I looked at this was parts. Parts is the main driver for the severity increase. What are we at here? Sorry, this is pretty small up here. 66% in Saskatchewan, 34% in BC, 70% in Alberta, and 49% in Manitoba. We'll look at BC a little bit, why that looks a little bit less in BC. ICBC has a little bit different estimating practices than the other 2 provincial insurers. So parts is the primary driver of this increased severity. So what I wanted to do was dig into parts a little bit more again. So we're going to actually look at the different parts segments. We got OEM increases. OEM over the last 3 years is up about 67%. BC about 34%. Alberta about 75%. Manitoba about 40, high 40s. So we can see parts is that big increase, and OEM parts are especially driving that increase in severity. Aftermarket, fairly substantial increase in Saskatchewan over the last 3 years. BC, not as high. Alberta, about 50% ballpark, and Manitoba has almost doubled their aftermarket parts from the previous 3 years before. It's still not a big dollar value size because it's still the lowest one, but they're using more aftermarket parts. And our LKQ or used parts, only up about 7% in Saskatchewan. That could be because of SGI policies that they were already pretty heavy on recycled parts to begin with. BC's up about 29%, Alberta about 15%, Manitoba only 4%, like I said. So we can see OEMs driving the increase primarily, and where BC is actually kind of lowered their OEM drive is they're putting more aftermarket and more LKQ on. And I see BC's policy generally, if it's available aftermarket, it goes on the car. So it reduces the amount of OEM parts. So what's this kind of mean? From our relationships with repairers, we do a lot of work for the OEs. What's this really mean? Where's the industry going right now? The underlying trends will continue. Labor rate or labor cost or labor sale of the repair will continue to increase, and so will parts. Parts and labor are going to drive the additional severities. Insurers will continue to be under extreme pressure. A little bit different here in Saskatchewan because SGI is kind of a non-profit company, so they're not under the pressures the private insurers are. But the private insurers are under extreme pressure right now. They're having a hard time actually with their cost control and their investments. So a little bit different situation again here in Saskatchewan, but private insurers are under a lot of pressure right now. They're going to look to the repair community for help. So you guys are, I think, very fortunate that SGI already in conversations with you. The private markets actually are going to have to start talking to their repairers in a little bit deeper relationships because they need their help. With capacity of repairs, definitely they need some help, and they need to try to figure out who's going to be the most efficient. And efficiency will be the key to success for everybody. Insurers, repairers, suppliers. I think all the different stakeholders in this industry need to start talking a little bit closer because the only way that this industry is going to survive is we need to be extremely, extremely efficient. And as an industry right now, we're not really there. So what else is on the horizon? Like I mentioned, we do a lot of work with the OEs. OEMs are fairly active right now in collision, and they're going to become extremely more active than they are now. We've talked about EVs at a couple different presentations today. As the EV park gets bigger, OEs lose money in the service drive. Those service opportunities for the OE aren't going to be there. So now they're all starting to ultimately focus on collision. So collision certified networks are going to grow. Some of the OEs we work with are getting extremely focused on competitive parts pricing. They're starting to build more and more programs. They see that revenue loss on the service side, and they're going to try to make it up in collision. And even on the U.S. side, we have a couple clients on the U.S. side that have now started their own insurance companies. So we got GM Insurance. I think Toyota's got a program. Rivian's looking at it. So they're saying, okay, we're going to lose money on one side of the table. We got to make it up somewhere else. And I think they've targeted collision as the big opportunity for them. Human resource pressure will continue. You guys aren't going to magically find a bunch of journeymen. It's not going to happen. We work pretty closely with BTAG on the other side. So anybody that hasn't went over and talked to Dave, I do that. They got a program in place right now to take somebody, essentially Dave's description of it. If you can hold a hammer, we can start to turn that person into a junior level technician. So I think kind of the point there is we got to grow our own. And it's a series of classes and stuff that they put on, but very, very good training on the BTAG side. And, journeymen aren't going to just appear. We got to grow our own technicians and our skill set. Conversations and cooperation. I think that's kind of the piece that has to happen in order for this industry to survive and make the economics work. So I think you're going to see a lot more collaboration. You guys in SGI are already well down that road, so congrats. It's fun to see somebody, Kieran, talking about profitability for a shop. You would never hear most other insurers even mention that word when they're in a presentation. So good wishes. So I've kind of looked at the kind of macro trends here. I'm going to pass it over to Jenica, and she's going to dig into kind of the SAAR specific or Saskatchewan specific details.
Can you hear me okay on this mic? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so that was looking at more of the trends over the past 3 years. We're going to go and dig a little bit more into what's happening right now, look at the current data for SAAR, and then also look into some potential opportunities that we see, dig into that a bit deeper as well. So all of this data is SAAR data from all the shops that we're connected to, and we're looking at averages year to date. So the first number that you're seeing there, WIP ratio. Essentially, WIP ratio is a measure of how many days of work are currently on site based on the average daily delivery hours. So if you're looking at one specific shop, for example, let's say that shop had 1,000 hours of work on site and they deliver an average of 100 hours a day, we would say their WIP ratio is 10 to 1. So we're measuring how many days of work are on site at any given time. So on average, across SAAR data, year to date, there's about 12 and a half days of work on site. So this is a number that we actually talk about a lot when we're discussing operational efficiencies. Obviously, if you have too much work on site, your efficiency is going to suffer. Your touch time is going to suffer. So it's really incredibly important to be aware of not only how we're getting this number, how you calculate it, but understanding the importance of it and understanding your own data as well. What is my ideal WIP? How much capacity do I have? How much am I delivering per day? Where am I at now? And how can I get there? We've talked about this a lot. We understand that there's a lot of external factors at play, obviously tow-ins and everything, and we're going to get into that too. That affects this, but there are things that you can do to help manage that. So we're going to look at that, uncover some opportunities a little bit, and then we actually have a case study that we'll get into a little bit later too, with a specific shop that really focused on managing their WIP, and we'll see what the results are from that too. Other numbers here, average touch time. So how many hours on average per day are you touching the vehicle was 2.3 hours per day. That's based on arrive to deliver dates. So essentially it's the number of hours on the RO divided by the cycle time. And we use touch time a lot as an indicator as opposed to cycle time because it kind of equalizes it. It takes into account the size of the repair so that you're really comparing apples to apples there. Average cycle time, 15.1 days, so just over 2 weeks of work there. And then the average hours per RO were 21.6 hours. So you can see, that number does continue to increase year over year. Obviously, as the repairs are getting a little bit more complex, the hours are going to keep going up there. So this is just another visual here that's really going to show the correlation between WIP and touch time. So what we're graphing here is average touch time month over month and average WIP ratio month over month, again, for all of SAAR's data. So you can really see as that WIP decreases, the lower the WIP is, it increases the touch time. So there's quite a correlation between the two numbers. Less work on site, you're really able to touch the car more often, you'll be more efficient there. So we want to give a few more examples here. What we're looking at now is data specifically from individual shops, SAAR shops here, obviously with the names blinded. So these are 4 different comparison shops here with different WIP ratios, but all kind of in those lower WIP ratios in the more manageable levels. So you can see there's one with a 10.3, the touch time for that shop, 4.2. So very high performing shop. We usually try to talk about a standard of trying to target about a 3 touch time as a good goal to start with. So if you're seeing a 4.2 touch time, that's leading to a 5.8 day average cycle time. So that shop there is, that's killing it. It's really, really fixing cars efficiently. Some other numbers, 10.8 WIP ratio, a 3.4 cycle time. So you can really see the strong correlation between that strong shop there. And then compared to these 4, WIP ratio, 21.6, with an average touch time of 2.2, or an 18-day cycle time. A 21-day WIP, 1.2 touch time, about a 17-day cycle time. So again, we know that there's a lot of factors at play here. Obviously, if you have too much work on site, though, you can really see how the data correlates. Point of this, guys, we know that you can't control everything. You're dealing with tow-ins, parts delays, all the admin things that you need to do, your staffing issues, all the different things that we've already talked about. What we're asking you to do is focus on the things that are within your control. These shops that we're looking at here are all from within the same market. So everyone's dealing with the same challenges, and yet some of these shops are performing clearly a lot better than others. So there are processes that these specific shops have in place to help overcome this. That's what we want to dig into a little bit more. So, what are the differences? You might not be able to control the number of tow-ins, but you can control how much work you specifically do schedule. So first step would definitely be understanding your capacity, your percentage for tow-ins, and maybe making some changes to your scheduling processes. But there's also opportunity within the work that you are scheduling. So we're going to take a look at that a little bit deeper here. Okay, so what we've done on this slide here is we've segmented all the repairs by RO hours. So we qualify any express repairs as anything under 10 hours. So that's in the green on the graph right there. That's about 22% of the work mix. Again, this is data from across all of SAAR. The light repairs are 10 to 20 hours, medium 20 to 40 hours, and then 40, that's your heavy hits, anything over that there. And then we calculate the average touch time and the average cycle time broken down by each segment of the repair. So if you're looking at that express repair segment there, again, 22% of the work mix, it's almost a quarter of the work. You can see the average touch time for that segment was just 1.8. It's just 1 hours on that one. Average cycle time of 8 days. If you're then looking at the light repairs too, those are the ones from 10 to 20 hours. Taking in those two segments together, that's 52% of the work mix. And that was a touch time of just 2.2. You can see then as those repairs do get larger, that touch time is improving. And that's a trend that we typically do see, on the larger vehicles. If you lose a day or two up front, you're still going to have time to make up your touch time, But on those small repairs, if you're not touching that car right away, you're hooped. Your touch time is really going to suffer. So what we see looking at this is actually a really great opportunity, focusing specifically on that express repair segment. Those are the ones that are within your control here. Those are jobs that are under 10 hours. They probably have minimal to no parts. So, you're not really worrying about parts delays. That's not an issue here. And they're drivable, so they can be scheduled in. So why are those ones on site for 8 days on average right now? So again, what we're just trying to uncover is that this is one specific opportunity, one area you can focus on. We understand that sometimes with data, there can be too much data. There's too much to look at. So we're trying to give you something specific and measurable. Focus on this, and if you'll actually see, your overall touch time numbers increase just by focusing on that one segment there. And if you're able to do that, all stakeholders win here. The customers are going to be happier if you can get your car back faster. All of your staff, it's going to be a lot less chaotic in your staff. SGI is going to be happier, and you guys are going to be able to fix more cars, so you're going to make more profit. Just bringing up one more example of this. This is now data from one specific shop instead of across all of SAAR. And again, just an example of a really strong performer. So you can see for their express touch time, they were at, what are they there? 2.8, it is really small. So they're at 2.8 there, a cycle time of just 4.4 days. So that's a shop that has the processes in place. They're focusing just on those small repairs, scheduling them accordingly, and getting them out the door quickly. And you can see that their numbers really reflect that there.
Yeah, we're good. Thank you. Thanks, Jenica. So understanding the data, we talk about, again, data-driven performance. So what we want to kind of do here is peel back that a little bit. What does data do, and what are you guys preparing for? Like, you're hearing all these presentations this week, and you should be thinking about, okay, what do I need to change about my business in order to make sure I'm ready for the next step? So we're going to, we're about data, so we're going to walk you through kind of a data-driven performance piece, if it's something you want to think about. And what we would typically do for a shop assessment. So we do have some customers in the room here that use this pretty diligently. So if there's any questions that they want to ask, or you want to ask them, that's great too. So how would we actually go through an assessment of a shop once they're plugged in? So just to, I don't know if we highlighted on that before or not, But all this data is collected nightly from your management system. So we just plug into it. Every night we get an extract, and all our reports and kind of operational analysis are updated daily, essentially. So it's good to go first thing in the morning. So how would we typically go about an assessment? And Jenica's going to walk you through this here in a minute. So historical performance. How am I performing historically? Average repair cost, cycle time, touch time, my whip ratio. We can take a look at that. How am I performing historically? Is there anything pretty obvious in my historical reports where I have an opportunity to actually improve the business? Then we do a daily operational analysis. So we have some dashboards that just say, okay, what's going on today? What's coming in, what's on the floor, and what's going out? And if I deliver on what my own expectations, how am I going to perform? So we're kind of more predictive stuff. And then a change plan. So we're going to look at a case study the next couple of slides after Jenica's done. But how do you want to implement that change? We've done quite a few lean change trainings with some of our customers. How do you communicate it to your team? How do you let them know one specific thing is important, and this is what you want to work on for the next quarter or 2 quarters? So if you guys need help with that, feel free to reach out. Every one of our team has been through the lean change training, and it's something that's relatively simple to do, but it's just about communication and getting all the team going in the same direction. And everybody wins, again. So Jenica's going to go live here.
Back on? Perfect. Okay, so as Mike mentioned, we start with more of a historical assessment. So I'm going to start with that. We have some pre-built report templates that are very just point and click, easy to use filter pages. I've got a demo shop set up here. So, picking things like your date range, any exclusions that you don't want to see in your report. You can run it by different insurance accounts or group different accounts together. And then just picking whichever report template that you want. We have a couple of KPIs-based reports that are more focused on the operational analysis based on either closed or delivered dates, and then some more sales and GPs-based reports. But for today, looking at the operational analysis, I'm just going to go ahead and run that. So again, we would start looking at this. This is a very simple to use template that's going to show things like, okay, the number of delivered ROs year to date, total sales, average severity, and then averages across several other segments. So you can see, average cycle time, keys to keys, average touch time for the shop, just 2.2, average hours per RO, and then getting into some different percentages of the sale as well. So looking at this right away, if I was working with the shop, I would see, okay, average cycle time, 16.2 days, and touch time, 2.2. That's definitely, there's some room for improvement there. So we would want to go in and kind of figure out why you're performing at just a 2.2, how can we bring that up a little bit? You can see in this template as well, there's the repair segmentation piece that we just kind of talked about. So keying in right away on that express repair segment, those ROs under 10 hours, you can see their touch time there, again, of just 1.5, with a cycle time of 7.1 days. So those are key things that would catch my eye right away, seeing that in the historical year to date, that's how they have been performing. But where they can actually go and affect change is going into their operational data. So I would do that next. We'll go into there. And this is more focused on, what's live in the shop, what's happening right now, and what's coming up in their schedule as well, based on some predictive reporting too. It kind of covers 3 key areas of the business, focusing on administrative, financial, and then the production side as well. So this is more of the summary report, which is very high level. This is something that we can have pushed as an email update to whoever you would want. So maybe the shop owners or the managers might want to just be seeing this high level report just to get kind of a glance at what's going on in their business. And then you could have individual reports, either the admin or the finance, pushed to individual people. So the idea being you get the right reports to the right people. Not everyone needs to see everything that's going on in here. So at this high level report, looking at the administrative piece, right away I would key in and say, okay, this date compliance summary, this shop has 50 overdue arrivals and 3 overdue deliveries. So that catches my eye. I would go right into the administrative report. It's very important to have your dates accurate in there. Getting that administrative piece nailed down is the first key step. Because if you don't have accurate data in your system, you have no visibility into your business. So it's important to get that, right off the get-go so that you know what you're looking at and you can trust the data that you're seeing. So wait for this to load here. But going into the administrative report, I'll just go right down to here. So these are the overdue arrivals. All of these vehicles had a scheduled arrival date that's now in the past, and it was never marked as arrived. So two things might have happened there. Maybe that vehicle is actually on site, and the CSR or whoever took the keys never went in and marked it as arrived. So right now, they're not going to know, looking at their data, that that vehicle is on site. You're not going to get accurate touch time and cycle time information from that. Or maybe the customer never showed up, and somebody needs to call that customer and try to rebook that appointment. So you can see the scheduled in date there. This would just help them go in and track any overdue arrivals. And same with overdue deliveries. All three of these vehicles were scheduled to be delivered, but they were never marked as delivered. So same thing. Is that vehicle still on site, or do I need to go in and update that date? So that would be one kind of key area that you would focus in. And again, none of this is meant to create